Hey, welcome into the Grace Point Daily Podcast. My name is Jeremiah Johnson. We are going to take you, there's going to be a verse-by-verse edition. Dr. R.B. Maynard getting in the Word of God. Whoa, Dr. R.B. Maynard, I got to wake up today. Yeah, you got a Mountain Dew on you?
No, I don't have. Sorry, I can't help you there.
I'm actually tired. Anyway, Grace Point Daily, we exist to bring you daily encouragement, your daily walk with Christ. One of the things that we do on this podcast, we have the verse-by-verse edition. We do every single week, and I'm tired because we had talked about it. You may be seeing it on social media. A good friend of mine, a few guys in our church, we had our pro wrestling debut in Dallas, Texas last weekend.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. It was amazing.
It was awesome. We got beat up, basically, and thrown out of the ring, but it still counts, so...
Well, it's just kind of like Sunday morning church service.
Yeah, right.
You kind of get beat up and thrown out. So.
Yep. So we had a great time. Once again, shout out to Rob Vaughn. Christian Wrestling Federation. If you're into that kind of thing, check that out. Great Christian organization that is in that genre, in that art form. So we had a great time doing that. But now we're back. So you always got to get back from a trip and get back into the groove of life.
Back into reality.
Yeah. So we ate good food while we're down there. We had the one unique thing that we had to go to, I guess, one of our friends, Greg Walden, that was there, is we went to Buc-ee's gas station. Have you heard of that one before?
I've never heard of that.
So Buc-ee's gas station, I guess it's a Texas thing, but extremely large gas station. They have like 200 pumps.
Wow.
Literally like 200 pumps. And then it's like a whole mall inside the gas station. It was large, and it is pretty funny. Once you cross that Texas line, and stuff does get bigger in Texas. It is true.
It's not a myth.
And I was amazed, not to throw our Oklahoma listeners under the bus, but at least from where I drove from good old Carthage, Missouri, Southwest Missouri, to Dallas, Fort Worth, driving through Oklahoma, I couldn't believe how dumpy it was. Muskogee. I was like, we need to pray for Oklahoma. They need some help, it looks like here.
Maybe you just didn't get to the right place.
Yeah, but so Oklahoma, come on, you guys got to step up your game there. I think it was Muskogee. Like I counted, there was like 6 closed hotels, restaurants. Yeah. Like, what is happening here?
Of course, that takes you right through the middle of town, doesn't it, in Muskogee? Yeah. So it's not like, bypass on the interstate, but...
So Oklahoma, I'm sorry, that was just my perspective from rolling through there anyway.
Right. Don't turn us off.
Yeah, we are in the Word here, 1 Kings chapter 18, right?
Yep.
And we're getting in there. So get your Bible out if you can. If not, just go ahead and listen. Let's get into the Word.
Verse 13, chapter 18, verse 13 and 14. And again, we're usually in the middle of a story, but Elijah has asked Obadiah to go tell Ahab that he's there, that he wants to see him, and Obadiah is fretting about it because he thinks he'll get in trouble for associating with Elijah. So in verse 13 it says, "Haven't you heard, my lord, what I did while Jezebel was killing the prophets of the Lord? I hid 100 of the Lord's prophets in 2 caves, 15 each, and supplied them with food and water. And now you tell me to go to my master and say, Elijah is here. He will kill me." And this is the third time that he's mentioned this. So Obadiah is afraid of Ahab. I mean, that's quite a reputation of Ahab the king, that it's like, man, he's going to kill me for just associating with you. So, he says he'll put me to death. He'll kill me. 3 different times. But then he throws this thing back that people say constantly, haven't you heard what I did? Haven't you heard who I am? Kind of thing. How could you say that about me? Or how could you ask me to do this after all I've done for the Lord? And now you want me to go tell Ahab and lose my life? It's almost, and Obadiah's another prophet. It's not like he's just some fly-by-night guy that Elijah met on the road. He's a godly man, but he's still afraid to confront. And it's kind of like, you just talked about it last night, about all of this church stuff and closing down churches and not letting people worship and arresting people and all of those kind of things, that there's a stand to be taken. And with Obadiah, he's afraid to take a stand. Mm-hmm. He's trying to bow down to the king, and, well, I'm afraid he might do something to me. And so it happens, again, we talk about it all the time, happens in every generation. And then it's almost like what people would say today, after all I've done for this church, and you want me to go clean the toilets? I think the greatest servant of a church, and that's, of course, that's what Jesus said, the least will become the least among you, and that's people who are afraid to do something, manual labor. They're always, well, I want to work with the church, but I don't want to do that. That's not my thing, or whatever. And I use the illustration, Don Smith was a custodian here for many, many years, and I truly believe that the custodian of the church is going to get the same reward as the pastor, the teacher, the whoever, because he was doing the necessary work to keep the doors of the church open so that people could come here and worship. I think there's going to be a reward for the custodian that's just as much a reward. He's going to have a part. If someone got saved in this church, it goes to his credit, the same as it goes to my credit that I was a teacher. And so, but we don't look at it like that. It's like those menial tasks that we don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I wrote in Acts. Well, I didn't write it actually in Acts, but
correct.
In Acts 6:1-2, and this is where it talks about where the deacons came from. And I'm just going to read this. It says, "In those days when the number of disciples was increasing, the Grecian Jews among them complained against the Hebraic Jews because their widows were being overlooked in the daily distribution of food. So the 12 gathered all the disciples together and said, 'It would not be right for us to neglect the ministry of the Word of God in order to wait on tables.'" It wasn't that they were too good to wait on tables, but it's like, God has called me to something better. It's kind of like God has called you to pastor the church. It's not that it would be too menial of a task for you to clean the toilets, but what I would say as a deacon, as a person of this church, you should not have to clean the toilets because God has called you to a different ministry. Not that that's too far below you in your pride or whatever, but that it's a thing. I need to spend my time preaching and praying, visiting the sick, whatever the things are that a pastor would do. I need to be able to do that. Let's get somebody else who can clean the toilets, if you would, or the distribution of the food. It says, "It would not be right for us to neglect the ministry of the word in order to wait on tables. We will turn this responsibility over to them, and we will give our attention to prayer and the ministry of the word." And the result of that, by delegating, it says, "So the word of God spread, the number of disciples in Jerusalem increased rapidly, and a large number of priests became obedient to the faith." So just by delegating, by allowing the pastor to pastor and not have to do those other things, by allowing the teacher to teach. Somebody said to me one time, we were talking about the deacons at one time. Every week, one of the deacons was supposed to go back and help, like with children's church, just to be a helper. And well, I was playing on the worship team, so that was something I didn't do. And somebody said, "Well, you're never back there." And I said, "Well, it's kind of like sometimes you have to say no." I mean, because. And she said, "Well, I wish I had that privilege." And I thought, you're not around when I go to Willowcrest every Friday night, and you're not there with me when I'm studying for a Sunday school class, but we make those judgments like, well, how come you get a right to not do this? Like it was a burden. And she was the leader of the children's ministry. So it was almost like, well, I have to do this, you should have to do it too, And that's, again, attitude is a whole thing. But delegating those things, and that's all.
Well, you said, listen, if you've gone to church as long as I have here, given as much money as I have to this church, then you could do that, but you haven't. So
we were talking just this morning about how things get named after people because they give a lot of money.
Right.
I think this should be the Rick Maynard Grace Point Assembly of God Church.
Yeah.
That's, I think,
sure.
I mean, surely I've given more than anyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept track of it. So anyway,
praise God.
That's a joke, sarcasm. So 18:15, Elijah said, "As the Lord Almighty, whom I serve, I will surely present myself to Ahab today." In other words, he's promising Obadiah, listen, if you go tell him I'm here, I'm not going to disappear. I mean, as surely he's not going to kill you because you're going to tell him the truth, and I'm going to be here when he comes looking for me. So Obadiah, 16:17, went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" And you would think that Ahab would know better. I mean, he's seen what Elijah's done. He's heard the stories about Elijah. It takes a lot of guts or stupidity for, honestly, we talked about John MacArthur's church. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of guts to come against John MacArthur. I mean, knowing what he's done, probably for not just the church, but probably the community and all of those things, and a man of God who, honestly, if sinners really knew, they'd be scared to death to confront somebody like that because they'd be afraid God would, God's going to get you for that kind of thing. But always blaming somebody else. In other words, none of this is my fault. All this trouble, all this drought, that's all on you, Elijah. I mean, you troubler of Israel. I mean, troubler. I mean, he's done more good for Israel than anybody else at that time, anyway. And blaming God's man, God's prophet, blaming him for revealing the sin of the people. I mean, it's again, in our culture, it's like getting mad at the pastor because he preached against a certain topic. Get mad at the pastor because, well, he preached against alcohol. Mm-hmm. And, I don't see anything wrong with alcohol, or I don't see anything wrong with whatever it may be that you're, and we don't preach here, here's your list of sins. Right. We're not that judgmental or that legalistic to have that list of things that you can or can't do. But people get mad because you step on toes. Mm-hmm. Well, you're getting a little too close there, Pastor. You need to back off and be a little more general. And so that's what Ahab, he's mad at the man of God because the man of God has revealed his own sin. And that troubler, it's where we get that the term stirring up trouble, because it's as if you come to a creek and you want to get a drink out of that creek, and there's other people that are going to come behind you, but instead of being very careful to scoop up water and get a drink, you stir it all up, and then it's muddy for the next guy that comes along. So that's where that comes from, is why did you stir all that up, make it rough on everybody that's coming behind you? So 18 and 19. This is Ahab. "I have not made trouble for Israel," Elijah replied, "but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So I don't, this whole story, there's way more to the story than what we have here. I don't know what the conversations were between Elijah and Ahab and all the little details or whatever. We don't even know about all the conversation between God and Elijah. In other words, you have to wonder, okay, when Elijah was by himself, did God lay this thing out? Did God give Elijah a dream where he saw the picture of how Ahab was going to respond, and the picture of, if you've read the Bible at all, you know this story now that's coming about fire from heaven, and we've been taught, you weren't raised in the church, but as small children, this is a kind of a dramatic, kind of like David and Goliath story. Probably every church kid has heard the story about the fire from heaven and what's coming up in this story. And so he turns the tables on Ahab. It's not my fault, it's your fault. You can blame me all you want to, but this is you. Mm-hmm. This is all on you. You brought this trouble. So again, probably a lot more than we know about here in the story. I don't know how God revealed it. And then you almost have to wonder, is Elijah just getting stirred up, and we know that God told Elijah, at your word, there won't be rain on the land. I kind of feel like Elijah was so in tune with God, not that he could just on a whim say anything he wanted to and it was going to happen, but I think he was so in tune with God that he knew what God would want, and he could just speak what he felt like. He set up this scenario. Okay, this is what we're going to do. I don't know whether God even told him those details or whether God just allowed him to make the statements, and then God would come into an agreement with that. I don't know which way it worked, but pretty bold statements on Elijah's part to do this. And of course, we talked about idol worship. Even last night, we talked a lot about idol worship here.
Yep.
But it's a matter of, we're going to do something in public here to prove who God is. And I don't think God needs to prove who he is. You know, people say, well, if I could just see a miracle, then I'd believe. Or if such and so happened, then I would believe. Probably not even true, because you'd forget. It wouldn't be long till you'd forget about that miracle and you'd be right back where you were. But, you know, and I have this conversation frequently when I'm studying in the morning and Stella's in the other room, and I just stop and go in there, and it's like, why is it that we don't see these kind of things today? I mean, why is it that God doesn't just zap people, and maybe he does and we just don't know it, but this is going to be a very public thing. This is not like, Ahab, you're going to go back to your bed, and tonight you're going to die, and, you know, nobody would know that it had anything to do with sin or disobedience or anything else. But what he's setting up here is call the people to come here. This is going to be a very public display of God's power. And I've asked that question, and it's a question that I don't have the answer to, and I've never read a good answer. Why don't we see these things today? I haven't heard about a story where some prophet went out on a mountain and fire came down from heaven. And I mean, these biblical stories that we hear about, I haven't seen it or even really heard about it, those kinds of miracles. Our miracles today, if we have a great miracle, it's that someone got healed. But that's I don't mean to make light of that.
Yeah.
But we just don't see these kinds of things happen. And I don't know if maybe Old Testament times God was still proving himself, that he was who, you know, in other words, everywhere that God was, I mean, God's everywhere, but everywhere he went, it was like he had to establish, I'm God. You know, he parted the Red Sea, fed them with manna from heaven, and all of those kinds of not even personal things, but public things that everyone could see, that maybe God was establishing himself as who he was and what he was capable of doing. And now we live in an era where that's already should be established. You can pick up your Bible and read that story.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of that verse I read last night where it says we are without excuse. The Bible says we're now without excuse. Humanity is without excuse. So
right, I don't
know if that's
isn't that Romans. I think that's in Romans. Right, and so I don't know. That's the only explanation. And of course, they were under law, and we're under grace. So maybe that's why God doesn't just zap. You know, I mean, I think about the society we live in with protesters and with corruption in government, and you know, why doesn't somebody stand up in Congress and say, "Thus saith the Lord," and fire comes from heaven and kills corrupt politicians, or you know, and I'm not being Democrat, Republican, or anything else. We're just talking about in general. Why don't we see those things? And I don't have the answer to that. And maybe it does go on someplace, and I don't see it. But I've never witnessed that, or have I ever heard someone say, you know what, I was here and fire fell from heaven, or the water parted, or those kinds of miracles. We just don't see it. But this is going to be a public display of God's power. 1820, so Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Saul had built an altar on Mount Carmel that still stood. That's excuse me. That's probably the altar that's going to be used. But Ahab obviously doesn't even know what's coming. I mean, if he did, he probably wouldn't have agreed to this because he's going to look bad. You have to think that he must have thought, I'm going to make Elijah realize I'm in charge here. I'm going to make Elijah realize that he should have never called this drought on us. I'm going to show him, or maybe he'll just preach a little sermon. You know, he didn't know at the time how all this was going to play out. He'll just preach a little sermon. We'll satisfy him. He'll go on his way. He won't cause us any more trouble. And then the other issue here is that they were only supposed to offer sacrifice in the temple. There wasn't supposed to be sacrifice out publicly and just go wherever you want to and sacrifice to God. It was supposed to be done in the temple. And so for this scenario, maybe Ahab thought, surely a man of God won't offer sacrifice outside the temple. So I don't know about Ahab. I mean, obviously probably Satan blinded his eyes or whatever to what was going to happen. But good common sense should have told him what was going to happen because of who he was dealing with. But so he sent word throughout Israel, didn't know what was coming. And this is only the 450 prophets of Baal showed up. So it talks about the 400 and then the 450 and the 400, but this is the 450 that show up there. 1821, Elijah went before the people and said, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. But the people said nothing. And you could preach a big sermon on that. And I've heard that quoted before. It's kind of like when Joshua said, choose you this day whom you will serve. It's like, how long are you going to waver between two opinions? Make up your mind.
Yeah.
If you are a Christian, Christians can't believe this, whatever it may be. I'm not going to get into legalism again.
Yeah.
But there are people who will say, if you're a Christian, you can't, and that is true. There are certain things you can't believe if you're a Christian because a Christian believes the Bible is the authority. You can't say, well, I feel like or I believe such and so is right or that it's such and so is not wrong. However it is, you can't do that unless you're basing it on the Bible as a Christian. You can't say, I believe or I think or those kind of things. And so he talks about if the Lord is God, and this is one of those God with a capital G, he is the God, or if Baal is God with a little one of the gods, in other words.
One version says cap G. Have you read that version of the Bible yet?
Cap G.
I don't use that one, but my daughter showed it to me the other day. Cap G.
Cap G. What? That must be a, what do they call it? Urban.
It was like a millennial translation of the Bible or something.
Urban Dictionary or something. Yeah. Well, the Jews writing God, they revere the name of God so much that they will not write the full. So it's G/D. Is the way they. So if you're reading any actual Jewish writings, or like I have a commentary that's written by a Jewish rabbi, and everywhere in there when it says God, it is cap G /D because they revere the name of God. And I thought, there's a lot of things we could learn. I know a lot of people, and before I learned anything about Jewish culture, I always thought it was just kind of, well, we're not Jews, so that doesn't apply to us, or it's not. Why do I care what Jews think? I'm not a Jew, But there are so many things that, and I know people. Well, that's legalistic, that you won't write it out, But I just think, well, okay, maybe I write it out, but what do I do that shows my reverence? For God. I should have something that shows that the name of God is special, especially, and again, we won't say the words, but GD. Yeah, we're saying G/D, and other people are saying GD to me, that is taking the Lord's name in vain. Mm-hmm. It's not about cuss words. I don't think the Bible, I'm not saying it's okay to cuss, but I don't think the Bible was talking about a lot of what we would call cussing today. I think it's more about using his name. I think that's the worst form of cussing, cursing, whatever you want to say, is to GD. Or I hear people, and I hate to even say it, but well, Jesus Christ, and to me that's the worst form of cursing that there is to use God's name in some way that has nothing to do with his character. Well, it's really making his character bad.
Yeah.
To use it in that sense. And so
I used Bill Gaither's name in vain last night.
Yeah,
I think people enjoyed that, though.
I did enjoy that. That was
sorry, Bill.
Yeah.
It was just a moment.
Got to throw somebody under the bus, and it was your turn. So, but it really has to do with lukewarmness. And again, you used that scripture last night. Spewing, I'd rather you be hot or cold. I'm going to spew you out or vomit, basically. It makes me sick that you're lukewarm. And then it talks about in James, it talks about this wavering between two opinions. James 1:8 says, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. James 4:8 says, draw near to God, he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. And I believe that there may be different takes on being double-minded, but I think double-minded has to do with when you, kayfabe, is that the word?
Yep.
Am I using it right?
Yep.
You talked about it. You need to go back and listen to last night's.
I'm indoctrinating the church and pro wrestling terminology. It's great.
You people out there need to go watch last night's service, so you'll know about that. But it's that fake, being double-minded. I say this, but I do. It ranks right in there with hypocrisy, saying one thing, doing something else, or double-minded. How long are you going to waver between two opinions? Make up your mind. Going out to eat. Where do you want to eat? Well, I don't care. Well, let's go here. I don't really like that. It's like make up your mind where you want to. There's a place in Nevada. The actual name of the restaurant is I Don't Care.
Okay.
So when people say, where do you want to eat? I don't care. You just drive down there.
That's a good idea. Very creative. Good job.
It is. So I only eaten there once. It was okay, but 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 it's that God and what? What are you going to add to God? Why can't you just say God, capital G, God is God? But it's like, well, yeah, he's one of the gods. And even with Baal, he says, if Baal is God, but Baal still wasn't the only God. There were so many gods, literally thousands of gods.
Yes.
And so now Baal is just one that he's probably the most prevalent of the day would be. Next month, maybe it's going to be the god of water. Right now, it's Baal is god of fire. So he's the guy right now. But next week, it's going to be somebody else.
Yeah.
But
I'll hit on this story quick. It's loosely connected to what we're talking about. When I was in Chiapas, Mexico, we crossed the border and went to some Mayan ruins down in Guatemala. And so you see some of these Mayan ruins where these huge stairways, right? And so one of the guys was telling us, you don't walk straight up the stairs. You walk like zigzagging. When you go up those, you're supposed to zigzag. And number one, it's actually easier if you ever try that. Instead of going straight, if you're like 200 stairs, you got to go straight up and they're wide, it's easier to zigzag than just go straight up it. But then secondly, the reason they zigzagged is when they were going down, they would zigzag so as to never turn their back towards the God that they were worshiping.
Right.
There's a sense of reverence. I can't even, going down these stairs, I can't even take this physical position because it would be turning my back on God. So, we have acknowledged the one true God, Jesus Christ, but it is, if you will say, admirable or partially respectable that they would take that reverence toward the God that they worship, that they wouldn't do some of these things, you know, and how flippantly we are
Right.
in our faith walk sometimes towards God.
Well, I've always said the abuse of grace is one of our biggest faults today. I mean, I'm not, you know, I've said at different times jokingly, well, I wish we just lived under the law, and then we'd just have our list of rules, and we would know what we could do and what we couldn't do. And if I do this, I'm going to hell, and if I don't, you know, I'm going to heaven. And I mean, I'm not saying I want to go back to that, but there's a lot of that we've missed, which is taken away. It's like you say, has taken away from that reverence of God, of His house, of His Word. You know, even again in the Jewish culture, if you have a stack of books and the Bible is part of that, you never stack anything on top of the Bible. If you have a stack of books, the Bible goes on the top of the stack always. If you sit in church, you never ever set your Bible on the floor. I mean, if you lay it in the pew next to you or something, but not on the floor. You don't want the Bible sitting on the floor where people's dirty feet, you know. I mean, there's a reverence for the book. There's a reverence for the name that I think we have lost some. And you know, you could take that further. Some people say, well, we've lost respect for the house of God. You know, oh, we would have never played that kind of music back in the day, you know, or we'd have never, I can remember a time we would not have had drums in the church.
Right.
You know, the beat of the drums was central. I've even heard it preached as, you know, if you're preaching against rock and roll.
Yes, right.
That there's something about like even the bass guitar or that bass beat of that it was a sensual thing, a sexual kind of thing. And I mean, I can remember years ago there was no drums and that there was no electric guitars. It was piano and organ and maybe an accordion. You know,
Pastor Greg,
Greg would fit right into, you know, he wouldn't be.
He does fit in.
Right,
old
right.
school.
So,
donut Lord.
But you have to think about here too, the boldness of Elijah. He's all alone. He doesn't have his church friends there with him. He doesn't have an entourage that's going to defend him if they decide to attack him or whatever. He's surrounded by two-faced people. I mean, he just said, if God is God, then serve Him. If Baal is Baal, serve him. But quit wavering between two opinions. Again, I'd rather you'd be hot or cold than to be somewhere in the middle. Make up your mind which way you're going to go. He's standing there on Mount Carmel with other shrines to other gods all around him. So this is not a holy place per se. There's 450 prophets of Baal. So Baal is not an unpopular god. I mean, there are 450 prophets who are claiming to be prophesying. In other words, they're probably respected men that are calling out to Baal, and we know they're not getting an answer because Baal is not real. He's a false prophet. Maybe they are getting false information, but then they're coming back as a prophet. They have respect in that office. They're coming back and giving false information to people who are believing because these guys are the prophet. It goes back to, you know, the David Koreshes, the Jim Jones, the guys who were pastors of churches who, you know, a lot of times it would be easy to mislead the flock because the flock is not grounded on their own. They only come here to hear what you have to say once a week. So if you're giving false information, that's the only information they're getting. And I'm not saying, you know, I should go home every week and look up all of your scriptures and fact check you, and you know that's the new thing now, fact checking. But we've always had fact checking because we've had people in the church who were critical of everything that the pastor said. But it is easy to mislead people who don't know any better. And I don't want to be. I'm not a Bible expert by any means, but I don't want to be somebody who's so easily swayed that whatever pastor comes here, oh yeah, that's good. I've never heard that before. We should go that direction. Yeah. We should do that. We should drink that Kool-Aid.
Yep.
I mean, that's exactly what happened. And so you've got him with all of these obstacles around him, but he still stands up. And again, we mentioned John MacArthur. John MacArthur would be, in maybe a milder sense, but still he would be the Elijah of our day right now. In other words, to stand up and say, we choose to serve our God, and we're willing to take, and he may stand up with all probably opposition from other churches even.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So it's the government, it's the churches, it's the health organization, it's the non-Christians. He has come against a whole group, just like Elijah here, all of these unbelievers, all these people who are wavering with opinions against a king who is anti-Elijah, against all these things. He must have heard from God and said, I will not be silenced, and my God will not be silenced in this respect. I think John MacArthur, a shout out to him today, is
praise God,
the modern day Elijah
that's
suffering these consequences, but saying, God is God, and we won't waver. So
amen.
We better wrap it up there.
And that is Dr. R.B. Maynard. We hope that you listen to the Grace Point Daily podcast each and every week. Make it a part of your life, your spiritual journey. We don't got it all figured out, but we're just trying to inspire you, get you in the Word. So like, share, subscribe to the Grace Point Daily podcast. You can support us as well. You guys are awesome. And I think that is a great question that the Bible poses. I'm going to read that one more time. If the Lord is God, follow him. So that's our advice to you today. Why don't you follow God? It's the best thing that you could do. Grace Point Daily Podcast. Talk to you guys next time.